And Guidry goes, let's go look at something that took place 40 years ago. Who cares? Okay, that's political.
Hello and welcome. On behalf of International Broadcast Media, IBM TV, I want to welcome you to The Lawyer's Den, a unique program where we get a bunch of legal-minded people who get together to discuss some of the matters of the day, the important issues in a way that's illuminating. We don't always agree, but we do promise the following: candor, some laughter, but ultimately a distinct discussion that will leave you with the most information going into the next day. Now, if I could start with, I am looking for my friend who's out there in the world somewhere, Nick Palavita. Where are you out there, Nick?
No, I'm invisible, but my fan club comes with me wherever I go. So thank you for inviting me back to the Lawyer's Den as your co-host, Bill.
Nick, you know you were always welcome. And you know, once again, I cannot do this without you. And that's for the millions of people that watch around the world, just so you know, Nick.
Yeah.
So can you introduce who else is in
the den? Well, you're the den master, but let me tell you who we got sitting back at the den. This person hails from the University of Southern California, in California, by the way, then went on and received his law degree which is a doctorate in law from the Ohio State University. He went on further to get a master's in law from New York University and then became a professor, and he is now currently a professor at Georgia College. Let's bring in the intelligent one among our group, Adam Lamperero. Adam, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, we do have to have some intelligence on the show because I think you're like the only professor here. And yeah, that's true. Okay. And because we don't have a lot of professors here, we actually do have a person who went to BYU Law School and also received an LLM, a constitutional scholar who got me admitted before the United States Supreme Court. And let's give a warm welcome to Jeff Teichert from Utah. Jeff, welcome back to the show. So now we have 3 lawyers. And 3 with LLMs, and then of course we have the host, but we're not going to go there because instead what we're going to go is bring in this attorney from the State University of New York at Buffalo. He shuffled off to Buffalo and then decided to turn around and go to the city of New York. He is definitely known as the street fighter among us. Let's bring in Fernando Leal.
Hey, Nick. Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Yeah, well, I'm doing great. It's good to have a street fighter around, and we have Adam, so you can go fight him. I think that's great to have you on my team.
No
and with
problem.
that, I didn't think so. Now, the Lawyer's Den does have to have some class. So we did have some class that comes in from Lithuania, who received her law degree from the University of Denver, is a member of the Florida Bar Association, and also has an LLM, which is an advanced legal degree from the University of Denver. Our favorite on the show, the class of the show. Let's bring in Guidry. Guidry, welcome to the show. Okay. Yeah, since we have our lineup for today, we're going to turn it over to the Den Master. And the Den Master also went to who's also an attorney, went to the State University of New York at Buffalo. Guess they know each other. It's Bill Trezevant, attorney at law, who's also the Den Master. Okay, Den Master, what's in the den today?
Well, actually, I think I'm more of a den requester because I request that you work with me because I can't do anything without it. What we do have is simply the following. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the Second Amendment. And I want to begin with this preface. We hear about it from every time to time, whether there are mass shootings and whether it's here in the United States or in Australia or wherever it happens around the world. And then there's always an issue about guns. Now, what we do know is that one of the outgrowths of this new administration is that at least during the campaign, then President-elect Biden said that he was going to get the guns. And he said that he was the only one in his entire history in the United States during his public service that was able to go out, fight the NRA, and get the gun. So now, here we are in the first days of his administration, and he's been doing any number of things, and his administration, with executive orders and legislation on immigration and a whole bunch of other issues that we're going to get to. However, given the recent events at the state capitol, some would call it insurrection, some would call it a freedom fight, who knows, but they brought guns. And so the question now is the Second Amendment. Now, first, I want to go to my good friend, erstwhile researcher, and go-to guy, Fernando Leal. I need a quick summary, please, but go right ahead. Fernando, please.
The quickest summary is that the Second Amendment of the Constitution guarantees individuals the right to own and bear guns. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Okay, well, I doubt that's going to be how the rest of this program unfolds, but thank you, Fernando, because your succinct analysis really, it just impresses judges, and I know that your clients don't even know that yet. Now, Adam, since you come from academia, can you tell me the other side where you normally have no limits on your time in the classroom with the students, and so you really don't care? But Adam, your opinion on the Second Amendment, please.
Well, Fernando's right. It protects an individual right to bear arms, and it does so because in District of Columbia versus Heller, the Supreme Court held in a 5-4 decision written by Justice Scalia that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to bear arms. And it affirmed this in a case called McDonald versus City of Chicago when the Second Amendment was incorporated into the states, which means the states had to comport with the Second Amendment. My opinion is very simple. 95% of deaths from guns occur from handguns. All of the controversy over banning AR-15s is really, really irrelevant. What we need to focus on is mental illness, education, single-parent families. And you want to make sure that Joe Biden, he says that he's going to get the guns. Well, 49 years as a senator, funny, he didn't get a single gun. I don't believe him. I don't trust him. And I put no faith in his ability to enact meaningful reform.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Nick, I'm coming to you because, Adam, I'm going to reserve my comment because I hope Deidre is going to calm me down on that one. But Nick, we've heard what Adam has to say. Nick, your thoughts? Adam just thinks it's people that are just crazy, as opposed to people that are actually crazy with guns. Nick, what are your thoughts?
What's crazy is the laws of the United States when it comes to gun and gun ownership, juxtaposed to the rest of the world. And studies indicate this, Bill. If you actually go and you take some time and you look at the laws and the massive killings that exist in other countries, the United States is horrible. Given a top country, we lead the civilized world in gun deaths per capita. And there's a real good way to change it. So I'm going to preface this with this. We have a little problem here is that we believe our forefounders, I guess these people like Jefferson and Washington, and frankly, all the people that wrote the Second Amendment walk on water, and they don't. As a matter of fact, most of them, if history will show right there, were traitors to the crown. And on top of it, they were basically slave owners. And these are the people that we're giving credence to. Yeah, and then they wrote the Second Amendment, which it was good for the 1760s or 1776, but not good today. So what we really need to do is do something really simple. Repeal the Second Amendment. Get rid of it. It's old, it's dusty. Dump it in the trash can where it rightfully belongs, or amend it and where it says the right to bear arms must be done by a well-regulated militia. Not every Yahoo can bear arms. And get rid of that stupid amendment. It's a waste of paper.
You sound like Guidry.
No, hang on. No, we haven't heard from Guidry.
I haven't heard from Guidry. What are you doing, counselor, putting words in the mouth of my compatriot?
Adam, that's a flag here in the lawyer's den because she can speak for herself.
I believe she can, counselor. Right. There she goes.
No, he sounds like a rich guy who has guns and wants to deny the rest of us guns.
I know, and you know the funny thing about that, Fernando, is that Adam has an LLM, but he refuses to respect the fact that Guidry has an LLM, so he's taking an unnecessary shot. Jeff, we're going to go to you, Jeff, and then Guidry, we were coming to you, and I think Adam wanted to silence your voice, which is not what I want to do. Jeff, please.
All right, thank you. This is a brief that I filed in front of the U.S. Supreme Court in 2008 in the case that Adam cited, District of Columbia versus Heller. I won't read the entire thing during this program because there isn't time. But if you did go and look it up and find it and read it, you would find out that you can go back clear to the 1100s in England, and there was a thing called the Assize of Arms, which required every free person to own a gun. And the reason for this was not necessarily to allow them to overthrow the government, but to allow them to be the government. Now, Nick talks about any Yahoo. Well, I don't think as a society, as a free society, we've ever considered ourselves Yahoos, but this brief contains numerous references to how the founders thought of the militia as the body of the people. It was every able-bodied person. Now, why was this so important? The founders had a fear of standing armies, of professional armies. Why? Because an army, a professional army, is a well-armed special interest group. They thought that a militia was far safer to freedom than a standing army. And so they wanted a militia not only as the army to protect us, but as the police force to carry out law enforcement. If you know, police officers in England are called bobbies. The reason why is Sir Robert Peel was the first prime minister to institute a professional police force. That was during the time of Queen Victoria. London already had over 1 million people by this time, and they were still using a citizen militia as their police force. Now, I understand that in our society today, we don't have a lot of citizen involvement in policing. I think we need a lot more. I think we'd have fewer incidents like George Floyd if we did involve the average citizen in policing. However, I also believe that a militia, even the National Guard, is more broadly representative of the people than a standing army. I also believe that that free people, in order to have power, well, as Mao, the chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, said, political power grows out the barrel of a gun. If we want to maintain a free society, we need to have an armed populace. Bill, you need to unmute.
You need to unmute, Bill.
My apologies. Kadri, you've heard from your colleagues right now, and I think the world wants to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Because you bring a really, really unique perspective into all of this, from your where you grew up, what you do now, how you look at the world. And particularly, I'm giving you approval. If you want to take any pot shots at Adam, go right ahead. So, because I'm going to put Adam on mute.
So, thank you, Bill. Thank you. I don't think that my perspective is going to be that unique. I am PG and I'm PR. I am pro-guns and I'm pro-regulations. When it comes to Adam's point, I have to agree with it. Handguns definitely a point to look at and to handle and to interrogate more significantly, as we know that I think more than 50 out of 100 people being killed every month are women. So I do agree with you, Adam, to the point, however, not fully. When it comes to Nick's point about the Second Amendment and its revocation, well, it was one of the least discussed amendments in Congress when it was proposed. It was needed. It was well taken. I think that modern dialogue of the Constitution is leaning towards more comprehensive interpretation, and that's what we are talking about. So those would be my points. When it comes to Jeff's point, I want to mention that during the time when citizens were forced to buy certain weapons, government did not compensate them. So they also had to do it from their own pocket. And when it comes to the militia, during the Reconstruction period, when the Southerners, primarily in South, were arming themselves to attack African Americans, the militia was deemed to was banned. So there is a course in our historic constitutional debates against the militia, and we should not focus on that. We should focus on the weapons such as hand weapons and automatic, semi-automatic weapons here.
You
need to unmute. I know it's a pain.
Adam, Kadri just said that she agrees with you in part and disagrees with you in part. One, she said that she was pro-guns, but she's also pro-regulation. Are you willing to agree with her on anything? Either side, pro-gun or pro-regulation, Adam?
No, because that's like saying I'm pro-choice and I'm pro-life. That's like saying I'm pro-death penalty and I'm anti-death penalty. It makes no sense. And Guidry also mentioned automatic and semi-automatic weapons. Let me be very clear for the audience. 95% of deaths occur from handguns. They do not occur from AR-15s. Okay, so all the media sensationalization of the tragic shootings at Columbine, Parkland, they are tragic. But the overwhelming majority occur through handgun use, which is clearly protected under the Second Amendment, under District of Columbia versus Heller, and under McDonald versus City of Chicago. So the answer is, how do we address this? The answer is not by taking the guns away. It's by addressing individuals with mental health. It's by strengthening our communities and our education system. It's by addressing poverty. So in that respect, I do agree with Guidry, and I think she made a good point in that regard.
Nick.
The only person who's having mental health problems is Adam, again, in his delusional thinking about that, oh, we're going to solve mental health problem. No, dude, here's what you guys need to do. We got to get rid of that stupid piece of paper that was written in the 1700s that has no application in reality today at all.
Okay, we'll take away your due process rights in the process of doing so.
Counselor, can we focus on one issue at a time instead of jumping to a different amendment? We're focusing on the second amendment.
Well, you want to tear up the Constitution, okay. Not me.
Look, it's not the Constitution, it's the Bill of Rights. By the way, just to educate you a little further on this, it was an amendment, Counselor, as we well know. But give you an idea, Australia doesn't have a Bill of Rights. Australia did have a gun problem. You know what they did, Bill? They took all the guns, all the handguns off the bloody street. You know what happened to handgun crime? It went straight down, brother. That's what happens. And until we get rid of that stupid piece of paper written by a bunch of slave owners in the 1700s, we aren't going anywhere in terms of gun violence. And if you think you're going to cure mental illness and that's going to take care of everything, man, you really need to spend a little bit more time on your chair at Georgia College. That's what I would say, Counselor.
Okay, then I have two quick things. And first, I want to go to, I do have a quick comment, and that is, it's true that gun violence goes down when you take all the guns. In Canada, they don't have the same liberties for everybody to buy guns. Here in the United States, there are more guns than there are people in our population. And also in England, they have similar, sensible regulations on guns, and their gun crime is down as well. And I assume, everybody in the world is not completely sane, so I assume there are some crazy people in England and the UK, and I assume there's some crazy people in Canada too. And, you know, they are not committing the crimes at the same level with handguns or AK-47s that we are suffering here in the United States. That having been said, Jeff, I'd like to come to you, and then Fernando, I'm coming to you. Jeff, please.
Yeah, Bill, on the examples that Nick talks about other nations of the world, well, as I recall, in the 20th century, the United States Army crossed the ocean to Europe twice to combat tyranny. Now, we can look at Europe and say how great and progressive it is because they're taking away everybody's guns, but they've been more authoritarian than the United States for centuries. And what you ultimately get is having Americans have to cross the ocean and bear arms to bail these people out because they can't overthrow their own governments. Now, if I look at Noah Webster, who was one of the founding fathers, and you've heard of Webster's dictionary, he's the originator. He says, before a standing army can rule, the people must be disarmed, as they are in almost every kingdom in Europe. The supreme power in America cannot enforce unjust laws by the sword, because the whole body of the people are armed and constitute a force superior to any band of regular troops that can be on any pretense raised in the United States. So the idea that there are more guns than people here in the U.S., I say God bless it.
Okay, no, that's fine. I have this one comment, and then Fernando, I'm coming to you, and Nick, I see you, and Guidry, you know, I'm gonna skip Adam just because he threw a flag earlier and then didn't agree with you. It was just so rude, just in terms of LLM speak. But first, you know, Jeff, perhaps it was that we went across the ocean twice to save Europe because there were too many crazy people over there with guns, and then once we were done over there twice, in the early century of the last term, sacrificing millions and then rebuilding, that we said, you people are too crazy to have guns and you can't have nuclear weapons. So I hear you that, they are authoritative, and that's because that's how they are over there, because they started 2 world wars. We haven't started any wars. Now, with that having been said, Fernando, can I get your thoughts? And Nick, I'm coming to you. Now, listen, good. Fernando, please.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff, Adam, and most of what Guidry said. And your analysis of going over to Europe to save them, you're out of your mind. They didn't have any guns, and hence that's why Hitler was able to rise to power, and that's why you get all these authoritarian governments. Further, any authoritarian government that has come to power, the first thing that they do is they limit individuals' rights to speak, individuals' rights to bear arms. Look, the ability for individuals to own and possess guns was established by the Supreme Court in the Presser case in 1886. Guidry made a reference to the militias after post-Civil War, and she's correct. But those militias were the KKK. And laws that came out against the KKK, no, you can put up your hand, keep it down, I'm not done yet. Those militias that were coming up were the KKK, forming in its infancy, and the court tried to limit them along with other laws that came out, so on and so forth. I really don't understand why we're listening to some rich maniac down in the South by the name of Nick, who praises English common law and went to Oxford. Now all of a sudden he wants to come here, he wants to deny his American side and take away our constitutional rights to own a gun.
It's the top 1% for you.
Exactly. A man who himself is going to private clubs where everybody on the security force has a gun to keep us out, right?
Just terrible.
It's okay for them to have a gun, but us common folk, screw you.
Nick?
The issue here is it isn't the gun. Saying it's the gun is like saying that the knife and fork made me fat. The knife and fork didn't make me fat. What made me fat is my overuse of the knife and fork. It's the maniac behind the gun, because if you go to Sandy Hook, those were legal guns that were locked behind a case that the kid broke the case and took the gun. If you go to Columbine, that issue was really the parents who weren't monitoring their kids. Those kids were stockpiling guns and their parents didn't know what the hell was going on. I know in my house, if I was stockpiling anything, my parents would have known, there would have been a beating and the guns would have gotten tossed. Okay? Part of it, the problem here are the people behind the gun. And I do agree with Guidry that you do need to have, I do agree with background checks. I do agree with licensing. And I do agree that there has to be training when an individual owns a gun. That does not mean that you break up the Second Amendment. That does not mean that you take away our rights. People like Nick, who are rich, just want the guns for themselves.
No, I got that part. My hand is up permanently this time. Nick, I'm coming to you, and Guidry, I'm coming to you. Nick, do you have any response? And Guidry, please, because our audience loves your balanced approach, unlike Adam.
Yeah, well, the thing is, my esteemed colleague from New York City, who has a mental midget analysis when it comes to the guns, doesn't address the problem, which is the Second Amendment. And that's one reason, first thing we need to do is repeal that Second Amendment. We are not going to make any progress as long as you lawyers get in the way and you have all these crazy rights to handguns, to automatic weapons, to other guns. So if you want to sit and talk about this and do nothing, that's fine, Fernando. Go ahead and talk about it and do nothing. You'll get the same result, which is nothing. If you want to do something about it, Fernando, you join me in repealing the Second Amendment. Call it dead, and then follow what other countries have shown us. And don't go back into this history like Bill's doing. What happened in World War II? That's ancient history, buddy. We're talking about now. We're talking about the internet age. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the nuclear age. Putting handguns in people's hands, that's 1700 stuff. So what we need to do to start correctly, repeal the Second Amendment. And then we can talk about this. Otherwise, we can't talk about it as long as I have my old slave owner traders writing this thing that everybody's worshiping that should be torn up, shredded, and thrown away, otherwise known as the Second Amendment. to the Constitution of the United States of America.
Listen, listen, hold on, because he
Wait,
mentioned
what do you
my
mean,
name.
hold on?
Listen,
Count-
Nick,
count- count-
listen, as stated before, the lawyers have to interfere because we're the vanguards of society.
No,
And automatic weapons aren't being sold. They are semi-automatic weapons, and there's a giant distinction between a semi-automatic and an automatic weapon. And by the way, an AR-15. So we can clarify, the A stands for Armalite, not assault.
Okay,
and it is a semi-automatic weapon.
Yeah, well,
there's a giant difference.
No, Fernando, you've been skating on intellectual thin ice here, but you cannot tell me that a semi-automatic.
I will.
No, wait. You cannot tell me that a semi-automatic weapon that has a 100-bullet clip.
That's not a semi-automatic weapon.
No, that is no different than an automatic weapon. You can't.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You should learn the difference, because a semi-automatic weapon only fires X amount of bullets per pull of the trigger. An automatic weapon, you pull the trigger once and it releases every single round. They are two very different weapons. And furthermore, the AR-15, which keeps getting mentioned, has a 22 caliber bullet, which is the same bullet used in a Remington single bolt action rifle. They are both hunting rifles with the same exact caliber bullet. And the bullet isn't the casing, it's the actual bullet, because the bullet has two parts.
I can tell you.
And the 22 is the diameter of the bullet.
Fernando, I got it. Thank you.
So it's not intellectual. It's not stating on anything. You don't know the difference.
No, but I can tell you
something.
Can you guys take that outside, please, and let's move on.
Talk about throwing a flag.
Stuff. Yeah.
Guidry, please, because
we need some class here, Guidry.
It looks like we're having a duel. How appropriate is that? But no, I will agree that Fernando's making a good point. But there, I will also agree with Bill. Although semi-automatic and automatic weapon technically described are very different, as Fernando mentioned, I do prescribe to the opinion, as Bill mentioned. I think it's a cosmetic difference when it comes to the damage it could do to the populated area. And I think that's what we are focusing on. And therefore, semis should be treated as automatic weapons when it comes to this analysis. This is my prescription of the opinion. When it comes to Adam's point that pro-guns and pro-regulations is completely insane idea to put it in a short terms, I will disagree with it, Adam. I think that after Second Amendment was introduced, the guns became more and more regulated. I think it is the idea, and it was the initial idea of the framers, to have a security and also liberty. And to have a security, you have to have strong government, which comes together with the liberty that is given by the Second Amendment. Gentlemen, Second Amendment is a privilege. It's not an absolute right, and it has to be evolved based on the modern day interpretation of what it is in the community and the society where today we are now. That's my point.
Okay, I want to come to Jeff real quickly. Jeff, I do have a bit of a twist on this conversation, and that is a takeoff of my good friend Fernando's insistence on these semi-automatic weapons. Because one of the things that I think has been an unwritten discussion, and after Jeff, I'm coming to you, Adam, on this one. But one of the things that have been a secret kind of non-conversation is what happens when people of color go out and exercise their Second Amendment rights and buy guns. We have the iconic picture of Malcolm X with a semi-automatic weapon protecting his own home. And that, for years, has been used as a bad example of somebody with a gun, except that was legally owned. We also have the examples in our society of the Black Panthers who armed themselves also under the Second Amendment legally. And yet you never see a person of color with a semi-automatic weapon or a handgun or anything of the sort, then all of a sudden society flips out. Now, I do want to get to this question, and you don't necessarily have to get to it immediately, Jeff, but I want to ask all of my friends out there that are vehemently defending the Second Amendment without restrictions and without regulations, why is it okay for white people but not okay for people of color? Jeff?
Bill, I am so glad that you asked me that. My mentor, in fact, thesis advisor and professor at George Washington University Law School when I was getting my LLM was Robert Cottrell, who is a leading Second Amendment scholar. He also happens to be Black and grew up in the Puerto Rican section of Harlem. One of the things that made him so adamant about this is because gun control has typically been applied in a racist fashion throughout the centuries. You look at South Africa, for example. it was, now we talked about lawyers and judges. Lawyers and judges tend to be for more restrictions. Why? Because they think you can solve everything by passing another law. It's not true. In South Africa, for example, under apartheid, you could be a lawyer or a judge before you could serve in the army or own a gun. Think about that. Why? Because the white minority in South Africa was scared to death that if you allowed the black majority to have guns, their power would be taken away in a minute. And you know what? They were right. And that is fundamentally one of the reasons why we have to have a strong Second Amendment in this country, because let's face it, you go into Harlem where Robert Cottrell grew up, and if there's something going on between blacks and Hispanics, the white police officers aren't going to go in there to bust it up. They've got to have the ability to protect themselves and their homes, or they're no place, because the cops aren't doing it. I also find it interesting that the liberals who are so anxious to step on the necks of the police, so to speak, and are mistrustful of the police and always complaining about police brutality, are the first ones to want the police to be the only people to have guns. Why would that be? It's absolutely insane. Political power grows out the barrel of a gun. I am not suggesting war in the streets. I'm not suggesting mob violence or anything like that. I am suggesting the vast majority of the good, law-abiding, upright people in our society need to be armed, and that includes good, upright, and law-abiding minorities, especially good, law-abiding, and upright minorities.
Adam, you have the floor.
Well, I would just make 3 points. First, Guidry and the radical left wing wants to solve every problem by regulating, and shrinking your liberty. Guidry says she wants a strong government and liberty. That's like saying, I want to eat McDonald's every day and be thin and fit. It makes no sense, and the audience should reject it. Number 2, Nick wants to throw out the Constitution and turn the United States into Iran. I don't think we need to comment more on that. Number 3, like I said before, 95% of murders due to guns are from handguns. They're not from AR-15s, automatic, semi-automatic weapons. That's 5%. 95% are from handguns. So the question I have, instead of this lofty rhetoric and these petty insults, is what are we going to specifically do to solve the problem? What specific solutions are we going to come up with that are going to make a difference? Well, I'll come up with a few. First, I think we should be diverting more criminal defendants to mental health treatment programs rather than to prison. Number 2, I think we should be able to arrest individuals before they commit a crime if they engage in actions, overt actions, that suggest that they're imminently about to commit that crime, such as the Virginia Tech shooter who posted a YouTube video, or the Columbine killers who posted a YouTube video saying what they were going to do, okay? Or Elliot Rodgers, who did the same thing. We need specific solutions to solve these problems. And talking about automatic weapons and radical left-wing ideas, which is always regulation, or trying to turn us into Iran, that's just a lot of fluff and no substance.
Okay. Well, Fernando, what I just heard you say, and I want to give you this opportunity to just to be clear, you are now in favor of red flag laws. Did I just hear that correctly?
You asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you, Adam, because
I am. I am
in favor of red flag laws.
That's correct.
Okay, no, because that's a form of regulation, and see, you and Guidry do agree. Nick, Adam has just shown that.
Well, Adam, of course.
It's just the right kind of regulation rather than the radical type of regulation that would control our lives like Guidry purports to do.
Adam, of course, is geographically challenged. We know Adam's geographically challenged because I said Australia, mate, not Iran. In Australia, when they saw people being massive, there was a mass killing in Australia.
You sound like the Shah.
Can I have the floor, counselor, please? I know you like to interrupt. Okay, when Australia saw mass killings, what they did, and they're freedom-loving people in Australia. That's wide open spaces. What they did, because they don't have your crazy Second Amendment, which is the first step to sanity, is get rid of the insanity, which is that Second Amendment. They went and they took everybody's handguns. See, you, Adam, proposing, well, we're just going to get rid of the handguns. You can't do it because you got that crazy Second Amendment. So method number 1 to stop the insanity, first step, repeal the Second Amendment, and then we can talk. Otherwise, this is just a complete waste of time. Unless you get rid of that stupid law that existed in the 1700s, you're going to be fighting over and over again. A bunch of attorneys like you guys who say, oh, you take away my Second Amendment rights. Oh, he took my handgun, Second Amendment rights. You can't even get rid of them, Adam. You can't even get rid of them. Get rid of the Second Amendment, and then we can talk some turkey, and we can bring sanity to America, which right now doesn't have sanity. Our gun laws, doesn't matter what you pass, because you're always going to run against that crazy Second Amendment. So I say burn it. Burn it, burn it.
Okay, Fernando, we're coming to you, please.
Yeah, I do not agree with Adam and red flag laws. That's just, he's constantly preaching due process. That right there is a stripping of due process. Should they be investigated and spoken to and say, hey, you know, what's going on here? Sure. Should, if you're a minor and the police or the FBI or somebody sees this, come and talk to the parents and talk to the kid and say, hey, you know, they're posting these videos, what's going on here? Absolutely. As to an arrest and prosecution, no. I don't agree with Guidry when she says that the Second Amendment is a privilege. It is a right. A privilege is your ability to have a driver's license and own a car and drive. That's a privilege. We have a right, a guaranteed right. It is not something that we should have or should get. It is something that we are guaranteed in a written document. As to Bill's initial point as to why when people are color, people go crazy when they're owning guns, so on and so forth. I agree. There are a bunch of racists who see a black guy with a gun and they go berserk. No issue there. I am a fan of Malcolm X. I'm glad you brought up his picture when he's holding the semi-automatic gun, because one of my favorite writings ever is The Ballot or the Bullet. Go out and vote and get people that you will represent your interest and protect your home at all costs. No issues with any of that. As to my friend Jeff's point with Mr. Cottrell, he's right. For the most part, I grew up in a mostly Hispanic neighborhood that had a lot of drug violence, a lot of unsavory individuals, and it became that way. It was Washington Heights. At one point, there was more crack sold per capita in that neighborhood than anywhere else in the world. Who had all the guns? It was the criminals on the street who couldn't have any type of weapon to protect themselves. It was the honest citizens of the city of New York because of the gun laws that were passed by Mayor Koch. As to Nick's point about Australia, are you kidding me? We're going to start listening to Australia, which is a former prison colony full of a bunch of criminals and maniacs, and they realize that they have a society full of descendants of maniacs. So yeah, so they don't have any rights to begin with. So we're going to take away even more rights. Yeah, right. I'm going to listen to what they have to say. Come on. You're muted, Bill.
No, I know. Guidry, I'm coming to you, and then please, and then Jeff, I'm coming to you. Okay, but Guidry, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Well, no, I agree with Fernando. I probably misspoke. I wanted to say it's not an absolute privilege. I do agree with Heller's decision, and I love that point in the very convoluted decision that bearing arms is a natural individual right to self-defense. I love it. I agree with it. I support it. However, based on certain interpretation, when we start going to specific weapons and stuff, it becomes privilege at certain points. So there's a basic level and then it goes up. That was my point. Thank you, Fernando, for clarifying. To Adam's point about me being liberal leftist all over the place, Adam, I'm going to say three words. We the people. We the people. The legislation will adapt and create and move the laws related to the second constitution as it's supposed to be. It's government. It says we're voting, we're doing it's all kumbaya together process, and it's really not such an extreme. I think the regulations have been pretty lax up to now, allowing and celebrating this right. So come on, what kind of like crazy liberal leftists are you talking?
Okay, Jeff. Adam's red flag laws, as commented on by Fernando's notion that Adam not only wants arrests prior to even committing a crime, something like the Minority Report, I'm not quite sure, violation of due process, but at the same time, he thinks everybody should, keep their guns except for their handguns. Jeff, I mean, what can you make sense of out of anything that we just heard from Professor Adam?
Honestly, I don't know. I think I agree with Guidry's point that that it is a right. I also agree that no right in the Constitution is absolute. You can't go yell fire in a crowded theater, for example. There are limits. I would place the limits on the Second Amendment as the descendants of the weapons that that the militia had at the time that the Second Amendment was passed. That includes handguns and long guns. Would it include an artillery gun? I don't know how many private militiamen owned cannons back in that time, so probably not. Would it include a nuclear weapon? I think it goes without saying it would not. I think there are limits, but I don't want to emphasize the limits. I want to emphasize the right, because President Biden's not emphasizing limits on the periphery. He's saying, I'm going to get the guns. And of course, people are out buying guns left, right, and center right now because he's threatening to take them away. The same thing happened when President Obama came into office, saying he was going to get the guns. So I agree you can have a certain amount of reasonable regulation, just like you can with any other right, time, place, and manner restrictions for freedom of speech and so on. What you can't do is get in and regulate content. And I think the argument on the Second Amendment is analogous. People have a right to own a handgun or a long gun for the defense of their home and property and their family, and for their own defense and defense of others. And I believe that that's what the Heller case ultimately stands for.
Okay, so Jeff, are you in favor for or are you against red flag laws?
I would be against that.
Okay. Adam, you have the floor, and Nick, I'm coming to you, please. Adam?
Well, what I said before still stands. We need specific solutions to solve the problems of gun violence. Everybody on this panel audience is giving you flowery rhetoric and general statements, but nobody's even attempting to solve the problem. I'm the only one on this panel who has said, if someone goes on a YouTube video and says, tomorrow I'm gonna shoot up my school, well, then yes, I would arrest them. Number two, I think that we have a crisis of mental health in this country. People have schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression. They don't have the resources to get mental health treatment. And how many of them in Aurora, Colorado, at Parkland, were mentally ill? All of them. We need to change how we treat people with mental illness and give them the resources to help them achieve stability. Number three, Guidry's solution is always more regulation, but she doesn't say how to do it. Just like Joe Biden for the last 49 years said he was going to get the guns and didn't get a single one. It's all liberal doublespeak. They don't ever propose specific things that are workable. And you know what, Jeff, Fernando, you haven't either. So you're not really interested in solving the problem. You may not like my solutions, but if you don't like them, come up with your own. All right? Instead of talking about obscure Supreme Court cases that no one knows about and that change nothing.
Okay, all right. Well, I find it funny, Adam, because remember, you're an originalist for our audience, which means you believe in the original intent. Meaning,
I also know that 95% of gun deaths occur from handguns, not AR-15s.
May I, Adam? Please, I'm asking permission. May I? Okay, because it's just a simple observation before I go to Nick. And so, you want to stick to the original words of the Constitution because you're an originalist. You spent a great deal of time establishing your bona fides on that, and I happen to believe you. Now, it seems to me what I just heard you say is that you are now, before you said red flag laws, that's if somebody posts something. But now you're saying that if 95% of the people that are committing the crimes are by handguns and they're people with mental disorders, then shouldn't it be fair that a reasonable restriction would be anybody that has been involved in a mental health kind of situation, whether they've been committed on their own or for the safety of others or whatever it is, they should be barred from getting guns. I hear that to be a second solid proposal from you. One, violation of due process and red flag laws, and two, barring anybody that has any history of emotional or mental distress, including those that may have a medical history involving alcohol or whatever it is, they should be barred from owning guns. Now, that's what I've heard you say. Now, Nick, can you help me understand? Because did I either hear that from Adam or didn't I hear that from Adam?
Well, what you heard and what I heard was a
total mischaracterization.
What Adam spoke was what they call a sanctimonious diatribe, saying that the panel has not proposed something concrete. When, if you read what's up there, I did. The only one who did. And I said repeal the Second Amendment because this train doesn't go further until we get rid of that stupid document that was written in the 1700s. By the way, how many people on this panel live in a house that was built in 1789? Anybody? Oh, no one. Anybody drive a car that was built in 1789? No one. Anybody worship a document that was written in 1789? Please all raise your hands. Please all raise your hands. Okay, I don't. Okay, so the thing is, and I had a proposal that actually moved forward some of Adam's dream delusional thoughts of getting handguns off the street. And there's one way to do it, and this is a legal way to do it. Repeal the Second Amendment. Then you can argue with Guidry and how you're going to regulate and whether or not you're going to put in whether mentally ill people can have or not have handguns. But until you get rid of this car that was built in 1789, forget it. We're all wasting our time here. What are we doing here?
Fernando, please. And then Jeff, I'm coming to you. Fernando, please.
Yeah, it'd be kind of difficult to drive a car from 1789, seeing that they weren't available. There are plenty of cars like the Model T and cars before that that are still on the road and are deemed historical cars. Just like they're quiet, just like there are still homes from 1789 that are standing, and some families still live in them, and some of them are museums. So this concept that we're worshiping a document from 1789 because you want to propose some ridiculous thought to repeal it because you want to follow Australia, who is a former prison colony and full of maniacs, you're out of your mind.
By the way, we're watched heavily in Australia, so keep it up, Fernando.
Excellent. You know, Bill, you took the words right out of my mouth. Adam makes absolutely no sense. He's an originalist. We have to follow the Constitution, the four corners, blah, blah, blah. But when it suits him, all of a sudden, that changes. Kind of reminds me of a lot of professors that I've had in law school and in college, because he's also constantly complaining about due process rights. So what's the first proposal that he makes?
I never complained about that. You mischaracterized my point of view.
When we spoke about sexual harassment, you said, where is my due process rights? You were waving due process all over the place.
I was talking about procedural, not substantive due process. Like one of these
maniac insurrectionists was waving an AR-15.
And nothing that I'm saying is inconsistent with the text of the
automatic weapon. Really? Now you're proposing red flag laws to arrest people before they even do anything, denying all due process, right? Because you're denying due process. You have to commit a crime. You have to be investigated, figure out if you made a crime, and then get arrested. That, you know, even for a simpleton like me, who isn't an intellectual professor, I can figure out that you're trying to strip away due process.
That's another show.
I as proposed earlier, I agreed with Guidry and with Jeff that you need licensing, you need background checks, and I added, if you're going to buy a gun, you should be, part of the agreement should be that you have to go through training, how to use the weapon, how to store the weapon, how to clean the weapon, what are proper techniques. Those background checks should include mental health checks. Have you been convicted of violent felonies and crimes, especially if you've assaulted women, domestic violence, and the likes? Those are all sensible things because none of our rights are unfeathered, as Guidry and Jeff has stated. Our right to free speech is not unfeathered, and our right to own a gun is not unfeathered. But we do have the right to own them and to own whatever we want.
Okay. Oh, well, all right. Nick, and then Jeff, I'm coming to you. But Nick, you some of this, and your thoughts are, Nick?
Oh, you're going to be stopped like the thought police on these Second Amendment attorneys. So even though Fernando lives in this fictitious world, that he's going to, him and Guidry are going to create all these regulations, and Adam's going to douse it with a bunch of mental health initiatives. It ain't going to happen because we have the Second Amendment, and the Second Amendment's going to stop all your good deeds, and we're all wasting our time. First thing, repeal the Second Amendment. Second, then we can talk about all the way you want to structure this law relating to gun rights in the United States. And the slamming of Australia, that's ridiculous. It was a penal colony zillions of years ago. You know, I mean, right now it's a very thriving community. And frankly, a lot of the Asian communities are thriving. We just don't look at it because narrow-minded Americans don't see what happens in other countries in terms of they don't have near the gun crime that we do in the United States. And frankly, a lot of people are afraid to come over here, and rightfully so. We're the most advanced civilization with the highest rate of gun murders per capita in the world. I mean, that is not a good position to be in. And one way to start, which is concrete way, even though Adam couldn't see it, so I have to put it in his space many times, repeal the Second Amendment, then you can put your program in effect, this huge program that you want to put in effect. Fine, but you got to get rid of that old document that was written in the 1700s first.
Okay, Jeff, as the defender of that document, and then Guidry. So, Jeff, please.
Well, first of all, I love Australia. I lived there 2 years. I was a missionary down there, and so g'day, mates, to all of my friends down under. I also want to say, however, that all of these proposals that Adam's throwing out have their drawbacks. Now, when it comes to mental health, all right, to some degree, I'm going to go with Bill and Adam on that. However, almost everyone has at one time or another had depression, whether they were ever diagnosed with it or not. I don't want to have clinically depressed people who may be suicidal deterred from going in and getting treatment because they're afraid of losing their rights if they do. So I think we need to have some balance in whatever mental health proposals there are. Secondly, when it comes to the statistics that Nick is citing, I'll just read you a line from my brief and then I'll be quiet. In the end, the only statistic that matters in Second Amendment discussions is that at least 60 million and perhaps over 100 million people were murdered by their own governments during the 20th century. In America today, the necessity of exercising the last resort of revolution appears remote. But a constitution is not for the moment, it is for the ages. The people's right to alter or abolish a despotic government is fundamental to their sovereignty. The means to exercise that right should not be entrusted to a military class any more than the freedom of speech should be entrusted only to government spokespersons. And that's my word.
Guidry. I don't know how you're going to follow that, because he wrote that all by himself. Imagine that.
No, Bill. I think we all have to agree. Today, in this discussion, Jeff brought the class, period. Hands down. Very eloquently said, and I absolutely agree with you. To Nick's point, Nick, repeal of Second Amendment, America would lose is cool. Like, it's impossible. It's absolutely not comprehensible. I could not see it happen. The Western came not from Australia, not from Canada. It came from the United States. The core, the heart of the United States really is embedded in the right to self-defense, the right to bear arms, which is also supported by the judicial precedent in this country. So whether you like it or not, you have to, it's gonna be here, it's gonna stay. And when it comes to Adam's point, the only hero giving us the solutions, I will follow Fernando's indication in the very beginning of this discussion when he said that there should be certain regulations that are actually in the works right now, such as mandatory background check for everyone, prohibition of online sales and also arms sales during the shows, other things that Fernando mentioned. Also, Biden's administration proposed the kind of preventing the hate loophole, meaning that people who have not mental conditions, but people who have history of crimes, of hate crimes specifically, should be prevented from owning the gun. So, Adam, when you say that, we should attack the mental condition of the people, it's the same as, we should address the Second Amendment, right? Because really, you saying the issue that we all see and we all face, and it is an existing huge issue that spills over to a lot of elements of our daily lives. However, you're not giving solutions at this point. I think Fernando is giving more solutions.
Really?
Oh, really?
Adam, I'm coming to you. Adam, just sit tight, buddy. I got you. You know I love you. Adam, you have the floor. And then, Adam, once you have the floor, we do have to go around the horn because Nick really likes to land this program on time.
I'll keep this very brief. I'll keep this very brief and speak directly to the audience. The guns aren't the problem. The people are, number one. Number two, I didn't say that people with mental health issues shouldn't have guns. I said that we should increase the resources and support for people with mental health issues. Okay? Number three, I didn't say that we were denying due process procedurally or substantively. I am an originalist. I believe in the individual right to bear arms. What I'm proposing doesn't necessarily violate due process, and the Supreme Court's case law suggests that it does not. Number four, Guidry is proposing regulations that have absolutely no hope of working because the vast majority are already on the books and don't work, because she's not willing to address the real problem. She wants to take the guns. I want to help the people. And her paternalistic, radical left-wing view is consistent with those of Democrats who for years have spoken out against gun control and not done a scintilla to actually solve the problem. I offer two solutions: increase mental health support, divert people who are convicted of minor crimes, nonviolent felonies, and let's provide more mental health treatment generally for our society, and let's have intervention before the crime is committed when someone engages in an overt action that evinces an intention to commit a catastrophic crime imminently.
Okay, listen, just as a point of personal privilege, because I'm coming to you, Fernando, then you, Jeff, Guidry, and then you next. But Adam, you're slightly wrong, and I just got to throw a flag on this one. If Guidry's proposing anything, it would be maternalistic and not paternalistic. That's one, too.
Doesn't make a difference.
No, hang on. No, please. We gave you time, and I only have a few seconds, and I very rarely speak. But I think I'm the only one in this program that said, let's go get the guns, because I'm all in favor going to get the guns, with the exception of Nick, who said repeal the Second Amendment, which I find I never knew that Nick would be to the left of me. However, I said go get the guns. If Guidry says it's maternalistic, not paternalistic. So with that, Fernando, Jeff, and then Guidry, we're coming to you. Fernando, please.
Okay. I find it interesting that we're pinning our hopes on Joe Biden, who during the campaign trail said that he was going to go for the guns and so on and so forth, when he himself is a gun owner. Again, going to my point that people like Nick, who want to get rid of guns, are surrounded by people who have guns. So we, the rich guys, get to keep them. You, the middle class and the poor, screw you. If the police show up, great. If they don't, that's great too. Whatever happens, happens. I am in favor of very limited gun controls and regulations. I'm not for all the things that are in the pipeline, such as suing gun manufacturers for selling guns. I am not for one of the proposals that Guidry just said that's in the pipeline, which I can't remember right now.
Me neither.
I am only for the background checks. I am for licensing. I am for training so that people can learn what these things are instead of just willy-nilly buying the gun and doing whatever you want to do.
Okay.
I will leave you with the words of the great philosopher I was trying to think of, Samuel L. Jackson. And he said that I grew up in the South with guns everywhere, and we never shot anyone. This is about people who aren't taught the value of life. And if you think about it, guns have existed in this country for I don't know how many years, and you didn't have all these mass shootings. And the AR-15 has been around since the late 1950s when the Armalite company developed it. It's a cult. You didn't have all these mass shootings. So something has changed with the way our population thinks and acts, and that's what we have to attack. It's not the gun, it's the individual.
Okay, Jeff, please, you have the floor. Jeff, move, Jeff.
Unmute.
Discussion. Oh,
Okay, you're good. You're good, Jeff.
we've had an interesting discussion tonight, and I think any discussion of this has to begin with the Second Amendment. By the way, I don't believe a word that Nick believes a word that he's saying. I think he's just trying to create controversy on the show. But be that as it may, I don't think we need to repeal the Second Amendment. It's there for a reason. And I think the answer to too many bad guys with guns is even more good people with guns. I think that, I think about a little kid that had his leg nearly gnawed off by a Rottweiler when I lived in Washington, D.C. And it took the police 9.5 minutes to get there while that dog took that little kid's leg to pieces. Now, what kind of helpless people have we become when somebody didn't walk into their house, get their gun, come out and take care of the problem? We've become this way because people want to ban guns. People want the government to take care of us. They don't want us to take care of ourselves. And we have become helpless. I don't believe that's the kind of an America I want to live in. And I fall back to Europe. Yeah, they'll ban guns and they'll crack down and they'll have a police state over there and they'll say how much better they are than us. And the next time they've got a dictator holding a country in the grip of his hand, they're going to want us to come over there and liberate them again. I think next time we should say, you know what, the hell with you.
Okay, Guidry, please.
Okay, I will be very short. I think today is full of surprises because Fernando and Adam agreed on one point and they said that's not a gun, it's an individual. Well, gentlemen, I think it's both. And that's why I think we should incorporate certain regulations, because where it's liberty, there has to be an order. Where it's order, gives liberty. So let's keep talking. And again, PG, PR.
All right, Nick, you have the floor. Can you land this plane safely?
Sure, yeah. And as soon as we get rid of that crazy Second Amendment, then we can have a good, open-hearted discussion about guns. But until we get rid of that piece of trash, and I know you guys are all married to it, I'm not, then we can have a good discussion about the Second Amendment. In the meantime, we're always going to be stuck in the 1700s. With that, we'd like to thank everybody for watching Lawyer's Den, and we will see you next time, our great discussion on the Second Amendment of the United States of America. They don't have that in Australia. And Peter goes, let's go look at something that took place 40 years ago. Who cares? Okay, that's